Says this meeting is being. Oh, there we go. Hey, John, you are a sexy son bitch. Look at you. What 25 years can do to a guy? You don't look but a day over 101.
Some days I feel it. Some days I feel it.
And you said you retired recently, John.
Yeah, I retired from ARCO back in September of 2021, and haven't looked back. I miss some of the people, and I miss a lot of the scenery and a lot of the fun times, the jokes, and some of the
Yeah.
camaraderie. But I don't miss the monotonous, the day in, day out. I did it close to 32 years, and I did it all from the deck. And I probably should have gone in the wheelhouse a lot sooner, but at a certain point, I just said, well, heck with it. Got to be somewhere. Everybody's got to be somewhere.
Yeah. So when you retired from Arco, what I guess close to 2 years ago, you said September of 21?
Yeah, 21.
21.
Yeah. So about two, it's going on about 2.5 years.
Yeah.
And no, I enjoy it. We just, my wife and I go walking about 3 times a week. We got a senior citizens place we go walking. And, the other days I either work out in the yard or I'm always doing some little project. But yeah, in some ways I miss the river, and some ways I don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anymore, I try to tell, I said, well, you got to go out there with an open mind if you're going to start, and just listen to what people say. Rivers changed a lot in my 32 years, and a lot more for safety. And along with that, a lot more rules with this responsible carrier, program. And
Right. Right.
a lot of it was for good. Some of it was just got monotonous. But no, I went ahead, and about the last 6 months, I was figuring up my income, what to be if I retired. And I thought, well, I was going to work to 65, and my body started showing age, and along with hearing, and but I just go ahead and gave it up. I hadn't looked back. About the only thing I tell these young guys anymore that, I still know. I said, man, put you back something, getting that 401k, and one day you're going to wake up, and the river's going to be behind you. So, what about you, Charlie? You been doing all right lately? I watched all your videos.
Yeah. Now we're the shit, really, to be quite honest. But
Yeah.
you
What?
know, and it's funny that you say that, John, because I remember when I was working with you, I had just gotten out of the Navy, so
Yeah.
starting to save as a civilian and to get into the civilian workforce for me was a really big deal. And I remember us discussing a little bit about it over, but yeah, I saved my whole life, you know,
Yeah.
um, my whole working career, I guess you'd say. And I kind of did it by the numbers. I don't know if you did or not, John, but like every month I had a handwritten ledger I used to keep, even once computers became the way to go. I still I kept a handwritten ledger of all my notes for my bills every month, my invoices, and I would save a percentage in the 401k. I saved a percentage in my IRAs. I had real estate, all when my son was young, of course.
Yeah.
I had all that crap going on. But then as he grew up, I got rid of the real estate kind of because being a landlord, I found and having rental properties working on a river just didn't work out for me.
Yeah.
But to do all that, and then at the age of what I would have been, I guess 44, 43, to start tapping into what I shouldn't have tapped into until I was 60-ish or
Yeah.
older. I started to tap into just to kind of say, oh well, I'm taking a I guess a break from work. I didn't really know what I was doing, to be quite honest, at the time.
Yeah.
But that's what I've been living on now for over 4 years, almost four and a
Ooh.
half years. And as you can imagine, what, almost 15 years too early of starting to draw that money out. Now
Yeah.
yeah. So
But I tell you, on as far as the saving for retirement, I really didn't do anything till my last 20 years on the river. I was been at Arco for about a year and a half, and this old mate who's now a captain on the Prosperity, we were sitting there at night having a snack attack, and he asked me, he said, "Are you in that retirement or anything?" I said, "Nah, I really don't need it." And he'd been on the river like 30 something years, even at that point. He said, John, you need to get in this 401k. And I said, well, I'll look into it. And that was June of '01. And to this day, I thank him for that, because it gave me, as I moved up on the deck to be mate, it gave me, in my last 20 years, when I saved, a substantial amount of money in my 401k, plus they had a pension. Arco has a pension. And
Right.
I spent 10, 12 years not really doing anything. But I thank him to this day. That shows you in 20 years, you can still do a pretty good amount of money, as long as you don't try to keep up with the Joneses, trying to get a new car every other year. But you can
Right.
do all right. Something I wanted to bring to your attention there, Chuck or Charlie. You talked about, you had that accident with the helicopter, and did the VA ever get you into, your PTSD or anything? Not that I'm trying
No,
to be
and
any.
it's no, and that's a good question, John B, because that avenue, I guess, of exploration, really, I don't think that every resource was tapped into just yet. But the way I understand it, is back then, of course, whenever everything kind of happened and transpired,
Yeah.
that that the current rules at the time. I mean, obviously, I started having to where I didn't want to go to sleep and have those, I guess you'd say,
Uh-huh.
dreams and nightmares or whatever you want to call them. That to do drugs while on duty or while enlisted, I knew. I mean, you're aware at the time that it is wrong, but I was doing it, I guess, to cope,
Yeah.
type of thing. That now, and I wasn't really aware of some of the things. I was aware of most of them, I guess, but a guy I served with saw the first podcast back in January, 3 months ago, I guess,
Yeah.
and he's from Iowa. Anyway, he sent me it was called the PAC Act or something. I forget what it is, but he said look into this, because he said, I think that you might fall into a category with a group of other people
Yeah.
that they're just now that they passed a bill or something or another. I don't know the whole works, John, but
Yeah.
that he had mentioned that there were a group of people that if you got, and this is the way I understand off the VA's website as well. In addition to that, is that if a person right now served, and it was back in the 90s, let's say, and I received a letter from the VA. I've got it laying on my desk from 2018, so that's been
Yeah.
6 years ago now. But what it says is if during this time period from this date to this date that you served in this, in this area, that if you are experiencing any, the first option was any sort of mental health or drug addiction issues,
Yeah.
to contact the VA. And it said that even if you aren't eligible for benefits, that if you go there to the VA hospital in St. Louis, for example,
Yeah.
and you tell them, or you call them on the phone and say, I need help, this is what's going on, that they will help you first right now, that they'll help
Yeah.
you first and answer questions, or ask questions later, type of thing, that they're recognizing, I guess, that there are some guys
Oh
that
yeah.
maybe come into that group. The second one being a group of folks that if you were discharged due to the don't ask, don't tell policy, because back then, you remember with the homosexuality, if you
Yeah.
were right. So if you were discharged for one of those two reasons, it says that you can contact your local VA to get, say, mental health or whatever a
Yeah.
person needs. And
We,
that's one thing that I had not done, you
yeah.
know.
Well, I tell you, I've, here about the time I retired, an old guy, uh, he's about in his 30, 35, 36. He had got on the boat. He was a veteran. He was in Iraq and a little bit in Afghanistan. And he said, "What you in the service?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, how long you been deaf?" And I thought, well, I was in 77 to 80, and back then they didn't think nothing about hearing protection. And he says, you may be able to get some money for your tendonitis. And he led me in that direction, which I finally got. 10% for tendonitis, and also had a cut on my hand when I was on the service. When I'm still trying to get that, but he led me on or showed me the door about, well, you're a veteran. You just, and I said at the time, I said, well, Wade, his name was Wade, and I said, I really don't want to, I'm not really crazy about pursuing it. He said, well, you're a veteran, you deserve it. And of course, well, what led it to me, I started looking around. When you in one of your video podcasts, you had talked about, the PTSD, and I said, well, I bet you Charlie could, because that's a stressful situation. I've read up on some of it, and I thought, and I also got a website. It's a law firm. They specialize in veterans appeals, and I thought, and they don't you don't pay them anything. I got the number. I can give it to you over the phone or give it to you, text it to you sometime. But you don't pay them anything unless you win, and they'll take your case, and you get I think they get 20% of from when it's filed until it's approved. But my God, if you can, if you got PTSD, by all means, that'd be an avenue pursued.
Yeah, and it's funny that you say that about the tinnitus, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, my cousin Bridget, that's helped me in the last year, especially, I guess, helping me out a little bit. Her, I guess you'd say, brother-in-law, her old man's brother.
Yeah.
Similar situation as mine, and he filed a claim, to my understanding of what you're speaking of, due to his ears ringing. Now, since the military, he had worked the firing range and a few other things, but initially he was in the infantry, I believe.
Uh-huh.
And that's what he did, was that even though he had same discharge I've got, which was for drug abuse,
yeah,
that here it was, I forget how many years later, that he went and filed a claim, and now he's got a certain percentage because of the ear ringing. And when he asked me a little bit about my service time, he said I believe that you'd be eligible to file a claim for the PTSD thing. Now, this is what I found out, though, John, or this is where I think I'm at an understanding with.
Yeah.
So, to go that route of what you're speaking of, or to do what this man did anyway, is that he went with his discharge the way it was, which is not a good, and he filed a claim right from the get-go, and he was approved, and he's got his claim now for his bad ears.
Yeah.
Okay.
And but like you're saying, on the PTSD, and I'll get you the name of this company. Well, I did a search on the internet, and from there on out, they kept popping up on Facebook, and I kept seeing this one. It's called veteransappeal.com, and there's a law firm, and they specialize in helping veterans. And I thought, I bet you Charlie could use this, because a lot of times the VA, they're not as always honest with veterans. It's because you got people up there sitting in offices that some may have not even been a veteran, and they think, well, they're sitting there deciding your case, and they're talking, they don't know you from Jack, but they just look at a piece of paper and say, well, he gets it, he don't, But I think this guy that had gotten on the prosperity there, he's getting like 56%. Of course, he hurt his back, and I think he's getting some for his elbow. But also there's another guy that I bought my van from here about a year and a half ago, and he just had gotten out of the service, and he was in a helicopter accident, and he got this one attorney, and he said, the VA isn't always honest with, you might talk to somebody today and they'll give you the straight heads up, and you'll talk to somebody tomorrow and they'll lead you off in a rabbit chase down the street off into the briar patch. But this one firm, I've read a lot upon them, and they seem to be really good. I thought, well, it won't cost you anything to try. But
right. And what I was going to say, John, was that situation I was speaking of, that guy, he went on ahead and filed that claim right away for the ear thing. Now what I found out was that he did that on its own
Yeah.
about that, but he did not pursue, I guess, upgrading his discharge.
Yeah.
There's another avenue I've read on that I could try to go down, and there's a law firm that specializes in this, which is upgrading your discharge. And if you do that, then you're eligible for the benefits if you get the upgrade. But here's the kick in the dick for me was the way that the rules state, and it's not just for the Navy, this is for all four branches, to my understanding, is if you've been out for over 15 years, which I have been,
Yeah.
that in that case, to get a discharge upgrade is kind of like, I don't know, it's almost like a decision of Congress, and I would have to be willing to go to DC to sit in front of a board and all kinds of things. That's not a bad route, but what I was told was that I don't have to do that in order to get the medical help or PTSD help, or to file a claim, that I don't have to get the upgrade. But you know, man, what bothers me, I guess, from a moral or from an emotional standpoint, John, is even just the idea, like, let's say on Veterans Day, how some of these eateries like Applebee's or Bob Evans or whatever it might be, that they offer a veterans lunch. I can't even label myself as a veteran anywhere I go, and I feel like okay, I understand where I lost benefits because I used drugs, but I did serve time. I did go overseas, and I was there in case this country needed me.
Yeah. But that's one avenue to look into. And somehow I'll get you the name of this firm here. And
yeah. And what was the website you rattled off a second ago?
veterans or veteranappeal.com.
Veteranappeal.com.
Yeah. And I can give you the number over the
Sure. I got my feather in hand, buddy.
1-800.
All right.
861.
Okay.
7262.
Okay, 1-800-861-7262.
And it's called the Cameron Firm.
Okay, and just tell them that John Esser sent me.
They may disconnect you from there. No, but watching all the videos that you have, I thought, I know I have no idea what you're going through, but I thought he's out there on the ledge, and I tell you, when you're out there on the ledge by yourself, it gets pretty lonesome out there. And I thought, man, there's got to be some way that he can get back. If it's just some income or something to give him, to give him a chance to have a chance still.
Yeah.
But as like what you're saying, you're on a dead end road. It's going nowhere fast. And at some point it's like, and that's I thought, damn, Charlie, I wish but I've been thinking this in mind for a pretty good while. I thought at some point I need to get a hold of him. I did send your son an email or on Facebook. I found it, Charlie Kulage Jr.
Oh, did you? Yeah.
I sent him one. You might, next time you talk to him, say, hey, there's a guy by the name of John Esser sent you a Facebook ad. And I said, I know that old guy. And he said, yeah.
And there might be a guy named Tim Tragle that also tried to connect with him on Facebook and or LinkedIn. So anyway.
Okay. Yeah. I watch all of Tim's videos, and a lot of them are interesting. Some people don't want to take the time, but I thought they're very interesting. You learn different aspects of the river. You meet different people. Sometime, like Charlie, I worked with him back in 2001, I think it was. Maybe that was it, somewhere in there. And I don't think I rode with him after that. I think we might have been next to the boat, but like he rode the upper. And I thought, I always wondered, I said, whatever happened to him? And I knew he went to go get his license. And it just seems like after that we lost contact. There's a few guys that, like I know Tony Stansbury. I've sent him, and I sent him to leave in, and Reed Williams.
Yeah.
He's a character. I thought.
Yeah. Reed and his brother Ward and Clay. Yeah.
Oh Lord. At one time with Reed, we were up on the upper Mississippi at Lock 4, and he said, you know that there at Lock 4, you got those big tall pine trees there, and it was getting cold. He said, you know, Reed come down the speaker where his light boat, and he said, you know, we ought to have a thing there this Christmas, and we could all the towboaters could come up here and get around that Christmas tree and hold hands and sing Christmas carols. And we started talking at the dinner table. This cook said, what are y'all talking about? And she goes, what are you talking about having Christmas carols up here? And I said, yeah, we're going to come Christmas Eve. Everybody, all towboaters are going to drive up here to Alma, Wisconsin, and we're all going to sing Christmas carols. And that was an ongoing joke with him for a while. And I'd see him somewhere, or he'd get on the radio and say, hey, you still going to be up there this winter? I said, yep, I can't wait.
And you know, man, the irony of that story that you just told, that the first time I ever met Reed Williams was I caught a boat at Lock 4, his boat, the Penny Eckstein at the time. He was captain on the Penny. This before he went to Arco. And it was at Lock 4 is where I caught the boat. It was like 1 o'clock in the morning, you know, a Marquette crew change, you know, and yeah.
No, you know, you talk about Marquette, not changing the subject or anything. Did you know a pilot or a captain over there by the name of Mike Pope? He was from St. Louis.
Yeah.
You ever hear from him any or?
Well, no, but I mean, I've been off the river now almost. Well, I've been off 4.5 years. You know.
Yeah.
Mike, he worked at one point. Well, he's worked about a lot of places as far as I know. But Mike Pope, he was from South St. Louis, and he worked for a while for Steel City, I want to say, and Marquette, and I want to say ACBL. Hell, I've heard him on the 10-5s before, but I didn't know if he ever went to Arco or not.
Yeah. Well, he was going to come over there, and he was going to steer his son. And at the time, they just didn't have anything going like that back then. And I talked to him, for some reason, I was talking to one of the port captains there. He would come down the boat, and somehow we got talking about, I don't even know how his name got brought up. I said, I brought up Mike Pope. And he said, well, it's funny that you say that, because he just was going to hire in here, but he wanted to bring his son and steer him. And at the time, we didn't really have any slots for that. And he said he thinks he went to Marquette. Well, and it's funny that I said that to him, because later on, a chief engineer, an old time chief engineer, started riding a boat. And he said, yeah, somehow we got talking about St. Louis. He said, yeah, I usually come up here to South St. Louis and Arnold, and we'll have breakfast there with an old buddy of mine that lives in South St. Louis. And I said, well, who's your buddy? And he said, Mike Pope. And I thought, well, small world. I still got that chief engineer's name. And he said every once in a while he'd meet him up there, and if he wasn't on the boat, and they'd sit there and drink breakfast and throw down a few beers. And they said he'd see the sunrise coming. He said, well, I got to go catch a boat. And I thought, yeah, okay. But you know, like getting back to the veterans thing, I want to pursue that. You know, at least call them and see what they got, and that they may be able to take your case and find out. You know, because you don't pay them. I think 20% if they win, and if you don't get anything, it don't cost you a dime. So
I'm glad that you passed it on, because the law firm that I have communicated with, it's for a discharge upgrade is what it's for. And what they kind of do is that they give a flat rate. It was like, I want to say $3,600 or something up front.
Yeah.
That whether you win or lose for an upgrade, that's not for filing a claim or anything for, like, say, PTSD. This is just for strictly getting your discharge upgraded.
Yeah.
So they do want money up front, but I thought to myself, well, after hearing my case, I guess you'd say that they say you have a case that are willing to take it, then maybe there was a shot there. I'm not sure, but they want their money up front. This particular place does.
Well, you know,
now if it's something like filing a claim like you're talking about, maybe it's similar to, say, like SSDI, which I did apply for last year, SSDI disability, and that I was trying to get a lawyer for. And when I got a hold of a local lawyer, and she heard what was going on, she told me that she wouldn't work with me, that I don't have a case because I didn't have enough. So I believed her, because she's been doing this a long time. So but that was for disability through Social Security.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a whole different ball game. But you know, I've seen I'm going with these people. I'm fixing to call them, this Cameron firm, about, I've cut my hand when I was in the tanks, and it happened on Army time. And when I went up to the VA, the guy said, "Oh, well, that don't matter. It's And I had, back in about 2000, I sent in the National Archives for the hospital report, and I had given up on it. Then one day I went to check the mail, and here's an envelope from the National Archives. It's actually from St. Louis, and it had all my history. This happened like in July of 1979, and it was everything. And I thought, well, hell, I've been needing that. And I'm gonna go after it, because according to this firm, says it don't matter, just because it didn't happen on Army base, you were still in the service, and they did the operation on your hand. You got a chance. And I thought, well, it don't hurt. All they can do is say no again. But
Right.
I deal with the VA with my brother. He's 100% disabled. He had a nervous breakdown, and he kind of reminds me a little bit of Rain Man, the guy on Rain Man.
Right.
And he'll never be able. He's been disabled 100% last 25, 30 years, and he's 70 now. And the VA takes care of him. They make sure he's in a good place. But yeah, I'd go for that. But I when this all come about, and I started watching your videos, Charlie, I thought, God, there's got to be something done. Something can be done. At first I didn't, when you're having the kind of like your nerves, and then when you started talking about PSD, I said, something can help him, because I know it gets awful cold out there on that ledge when you're out there by yourself.
Yeah, and it's funny that you say that, because about the PTSD thing, that some of the things I've read going to the VA's website, briefly, I didn't really spend a lot of time on it, because I'm not eligible for anything. But as I got to reading on some of their things, I really think that they've changed their, I guess you'd say, that their approach, like you're talking about, that what was it, 2000, you said that you inquired about your or about your hand,
Yeah.
Here it is 2024, that their attitude, like I say, was, it said that if you have, like, for example, like in my case, it says, let's say that you're an addict and your addiction was caused or whatever by PTSD being the primary diagnosis, that if it was from any part of being in the military, and if that's what caused it, to let them know, it says. But at the time when I first read that, John, and I'm glad that you're bringing it up now, because it kind of slipped my mind, to be honest. That when I first read that, I was actively applying for SSDI.
Yeah.
So I didn't think that would. I was going that route first to see what I had kind of going, to try to apply for two different government things at once. I didn't know if that would jive or not.
Yeah. And I would give these people a call. If you do a search on it, on any type of veteran, I searched veterans disability lawyers, and from there on out, buddy, my Facebook and emails and anything I went surfing on, it would pop up. But this one here, the Cameron firm, kept popping up the most of the time, and I thought, I bet you. I thought, and I kept thinking long and hard. I said, that may be an avenue for Charlie, to pursue that.
Yeah.
And what's the worst they can say? No. Well, you heard that all your life. No, you can't do this. No, you can't do that. No, you can't go here. No, you can't sleep in this morning on the boat.
Yeah.
No, getting back in the river, I miss some of the good times. Try to forget the bad ones. And I think every career is going to have times where you just hated it to a passion. And it got to be a point where, I enjoyed the crew that we had. We had a good crew, and, crews come and go. And I still keep up with a couple of them. Actually, I still keep up with that pilot, or the mate, who's now became a pilot, who now is the captain. And he's on his 46th year on the river. And he's going to retire here in September if he don't hold off till another couple of years. He's remodeling his house. He lives in old West Plains, Missouri. And he said, and he was made on that boat for the Prosperity for like I think he saw it in the shipyard back in 1982, and he didn't realize it, but he was going to be the mate on that boat. And yeah, I was sitting there, and a lot of people say, "Well, you think old Bobby retired?" And he said, "Yeah, when they decommission this boat, he'll retire, and they're going to bury him in it." But he's the one that got me tight. But he finally got his license, became a pilot, very conscious, very cautious, and he got to be captain. And he said, I enjoy being captain, but it ain't all what it's put up to be. He said, you're going to get blamed for everything. I said, well, I used to be below you, and I know how it feels. So, but he's the one that got me started on that retirement. And actually, his son, who was in the Navy, sent me something when I was pursuing some of this VA stuff. His son was a submariner, and he works out in Oklahoma for Google, and he got a good paying job. He worked on the he was on the boomers in the service, and Bobby said there was stuff that he couldn't even tell his dad. I thought I can understand that, but no, that might be something to go there. But I'll get you. Well, I gave you the number. And anything. I got your number when Tim sent me that text. Tim, where are you from?
I grew up right outside New Orleans, and
Okay.
been outside Baton Rouge for 14 years now.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. No, I've been down the whole many a time, and the lower just never did. I've always been an upper river, Illinois River, Ohio River person, and that's just where I broke in at. I spent numerous trips going down the lower in the hole. When I worked for Southern back in back in 90 to 95, we went everywhere. We went to Texas City, Victoria, up on the Monongahela,
Right.
over on the Ohio. Oh, I never seen, if you want to get on a boat that goes all the rivers, I rode that Joe and Stigbar, and that seemed like we went everywhere. You never knew. And sometimes we might load it out of Wood River there and go up to Seneca or go up to Pine Bend. You just never knew. And that's one thing I would say about smaller companies like Kirby, or maybe Southern, which is now, I guess Southern is now Duval.
Oh,
it's Southern Duval is the official name.
Okay. And I was there for 5 years, and I got the bright idea I want to be a barge man with that anhydrous ammonia. I got a couple whiffs of that, and I said, "Ooh, this is not where I want to go." So
I was going to say, I thought that most of their barges were the anhydrous barges. I guess those pressure barges or whatever.
Yeah, they got that. They also do some of their boats do the urea, fertilizer, liquid fertilizer, and I think some of them even tramp now and then. For anybody, anywhere, anytime.
Sure, but yeah, though back in the 90s, though, like you're speaking of, I think that was like their mainstay, their bread and butter was the anhydrous ammonia thing. Because I can remember that there would be times that a Southern boat would be pushed into a spot, and I would think, what in the hell is he doing way over there in the current?
Yeah.
And I was listening to these pilots one night, bull jiving on the radio, and I was just eavesdropping. And come to find out, and correct me if I'm wrong, John, because you might know this, but to my understanding was that they would do that on purpose because to try to cool the barges or something with the current that would be swishing up underneath, that the water was colder or something to keep the barges a little cooler. Was there any truth to that?
Yeah. Usually they'd have them compressors going day and night till maybe say Memphis. And by the time they got them barges up to Memphis, the ammonia had cooled down enough to where they could turn them off at night. Now they could go out there during the daytime and maybe crank up one or two of the compressors, and they would cool down. But no, there is truth to that. Now I don't know about nowadays, but I did that barge man for about 6 months to a year, and I thought, no, this is a little bit dangerous for me. Of course, it's a steep learning curve there. Either you're going to get into it as disconnecting hoses and stuff like that. I didn't have a problem with it. It was just learning the mechanics of the compressors and things of that nature. Like I said, man, and at the time they were wanting to really, like, they're in a hurry because they needed barge man. I thought, I don't want to get out here and kill somebody or kill myself. once you're dead, you're dead. But
and not to mention, I'm thinking about that just from a career standpoint, depending on the age of a fella is once you start that, let's say, and you get into that field, that you're kind of, I don't want to say pigeonholed, but you might be locked into that one specialty. I mean, you might be good at it at the end of your career,
yeah,
but hopefully that's what you want to do because that might only apply to that part of the industry. I'm wondering,
yeah, yeah. And there's some bargemen out there. They were bargemen their whole career and retired, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, like I was a mate, my last 20 something years, 20, 25, or however, I was never the A1 mate. I never claimed to be, but I thought I did a pretty good job, treated my crews, with respect, and tried to teach them. And there was a few that I had to hold my breath and bite my tongue. That's anywhere you go. I think my biggest pet peeve was I didn't mind waking up guys for it, but when I had to go in there 3 and 4 times and wake them up to get out of bed to make a log, all that just burned me up. And sometimes you'd have a guy come in there and lock their door, turn off the light, and go back to bed. And I thought, I said, "What?" That one boy, I come in the bathroom door and I opened up the door and I said, "Oh, buddy, you better hurry up in the bars. We got a bunch of ducks coming over the way. We're fixing to shoot some ducks." And he said, "What are you talking about?" He woke up real fast. I said, "Yeah, that's what I figured. It was hunting season. You'd be out there in a moment." But
Yeah.
they learn. They either learn or end up, moving on down the road. And
Yeah.
later on, that one of the guys I had a problem with, he finally one day I got a phone call. He said, "Hey, you remember me?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "I see." I guess he stayed on the river and he ended up becoming a mate. He said, "You're right. It's not what it's all played up." I said, he said, "Once you become a mate or a manager, it's not what it's played up to be." I said, "Yeah, you got make a lot more money, but you're having to get it from both ends." And he says,
I mean, I enjoyed being pilot. I did after, I mean, like my last 10 years, because I thought being pilot or assistant engineer was the two best jobs on the boat,
yeah,
As far as that goes, I mean, because of the responsibility, I had been on the front watch. I had filled in. I had had a front watch job for about a year and a half, 2 years in my late 20s. But when I started working the lower regular and I kind of got into the groove, I found that filling in if the captain was sick or something, for a couple of weeks here and there, that's one thing. But to have a regular captain's job, I just kind of preferred to be pilot. And
yeah,
I often thought who else kind of has a similar situation. And usually if you had a second engineer or somebody that they kind of did, because I was still driving the same as the captain, but I didn't have
yeah.
all that bullshit that he had to deal with, you
Well, a
know.
lot of plus, you add in a lot of this regulations that have come into the industry in the last. Well, I've been gone for 2.5 years, but 3 or 4 or 5 years before that, even ARCA was getting in. They'd get on the boat. Some of the people would help you say, "This is what they're looking for." Your fire extinguisher, your fire extinguisher are updated, your medicine cabinet, things that shouldn't be out of date, like your fire hoses. And it got to the point where the office had come up with a plan of every week pull out your fire hoses even if you didn't use them or not, still run water through them because you never know. Even if you get
Right.
on, you might get on a boat and somebody may put the wrong hose back on. um, Here you got a hose that's got a hole in different places, things of that nature. um, a lot of the stuff was good and it helped the crews train better, to know, if the fire alarm goes off, this is where we need to meet. This is the process. This watch takes the port side or find out where the fire's at. And it helped but a lot of times the captain can't run the boat and plus do all that at the same time. And for some
Well,
while,
and I mean, I think that's where having a good mate, it comes into play, because a guy like yourself, I think, makes a captain's job a little more bearable, because you're right. One guy sitting upstairs, especially from his one perspective, he can't do everything. He's going to have to delegate some things. And if
yeah,
he's got a mate that he can't really depend on, or that he doesn't trust to begin with, that he might be thinking of sitting down there, just shoving his face full of donuts and shit, not working. Well, that's not helping him. That's just making his situation
yeah,
even worse.
yeah,
And
you know,
John, because they're out there, you know, there are some guys that make it to a managerial position that they become that, you know. So
Yeah.
I would think that makes it hard. That whenever you got a good captain with a good mate, everything will run smooth with a boat, I think.
If you can get on a boat and you have that where you can work both captains and both mates, consider yourself lucky, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, you're always going to have crew members, you know, deck crew come and go. They'll move up, and the good ones you don't want to hold back, so you got to move them up. So then you lost a good crew member,
Right.
and that was kind of aggravating sometimes. But and there was a few that, you know, they didn't get along with other crew members, but they wanted to learn. And some of the guys didn't like them. I thought, well, hey, he's coming seeing me, asking me, how do you do this? How do you do that? And I said, well, man wants to move up and learn this stuff. Here's how you do it. And
Yeah.
you know, I think everybody that on the deck, don't think you're stuck. Don't think you're stuck at the deck end. Don't think you're stuck as a watchman or mate. Always proceed to go to the top, you know, either it be the engine room or the wheelhouse or wherever it may take you. Uh, there's nothing wrong with being, you know, mate and being on the deck. Yeah, it's not the perceived way of doing things, but hey, I thought I was right where I needed to be. Yeah.
Yeah.
Should I move? Should I win at warehouse? Well, yeah, maybe, but that's hindsight. You know, I'm not going to worry about it. I ain't going to cry about it. It gave me the last 20 years and having a good paying job as mate gave me a good retirement Social Security. The pension was good, but you know, some of the boys, well, I'm gonna buy me a truck with my. I said, man, don't worry about that money. You one day you're gonna turn 62. You're gonna be worn out, be tired, and you're gonna retire, and you ain't gonna have, you know, people that go there. I said, just hold on, because eventually one day you're gonna be 62 too. You know. And,
Yeah.
but no, I enjoy it.
Well,
Does
and especially with 401k specifically, that in my opinion, if a person is able to contribute to a 401k with their employer and they don't, that they're literally throwing out free money, because whatever they match you, at least contribute that much, because
yeah,
that's, you know what I'm saying?
I started out with 6, went to 8, then 12, and then when my wife retired back about 10 years ago, I went back to 6, and then over a period of years, I upped it to 8. Then about 3 or 4 years before I retired, I went in there and changed my, you know how you file throughout the year single and zero. Well, I went to married zero, put that extra money in the 401k, and I said it's kind of risky, yeah, but I come out smelling pretty good. And I thought, well, I wouldn't advise that for everybody, but I tell you, you know, if you're going to be out there and you can make, without a degree, you can make good money on the river. Because I did
Sure.
a last month, back in December, I went down to my Florida where my sister lives. She had any operation. I was in there one day surfing the internet, and somehow I got looking at the school system, and an entry level or a teacher with a master's degree, I was making more with a teacher with a master's degree at that small school, you know. And I thought, they're paying a master teacher that much? I thought, well, I don't have a degree, but I'm making more than she does. And I thought, of course, you know, you give up a lot on the river. Yeah, that's true. But I thought, something's messed up here. You know, I'm making way more than I was making more than a teacher with a master's degree, which, you know, I had a master's degree of the river. They didn't know much,
Yeah.
but I knew it.
You got a
But
PhD in bullshittery, you know?
oh
Yeah.
yeah, and you know, that one boy asked me one day, "Well, how do you do all this stuff?" I said, "Smoke and mirrors, brother. It's all smoke and mirrors." He says, "Are you serious?" I said, "Well, some of it is." He says, "Well, how do you know what you're doing?" I said, "I don't. I just smoke and mirrors." But no, it's in some ways I miss the laughs and the jokes and some of the funny things on the river. You know, things like, you know, what Reed Williams did with the Christmas trees, or just some
Or
of the
with you.
some of the things that come up on the river. You're like, this is definitely not a normal job. You know, if this
Yeah.
happened on a real job, they'd take us all and put us in an insane asylum. But no,
If I can jump in right there, we're coming up on almost an hour, and I realize I've not introduced Mr. John Esser.
No.
So you started engaging with me on my YouTube channel about the time that Charlie's episodes came out. Was that the first
Yeah.
time you'd seen the podcast?
Oh no, I've watched, Mark Knorr and a lot of the other ones. And I dealt with Mark Knorr when he was, CEO of MEMCO, and he come to a few meetings, mostly, you know, upper management, and you tend to see the river from their point of view, and everybody, you hear a lot of times that, you hear this, well, if I was in the office, I wouldn't do this and I wouldn't do that, and I thought, no, you do the same thing and they're probably doing, because everybody's got a job to do, and there's reasons they're doing that. And
Right.
I always been listening to the podcast. Sometimes I don't get every one right off the bat, but I try to listen to them because everybody's got a story to tell. And it, like some of the guys that run the intercoastal, I kind of can understand their point of view. Yeah. And everybody said, well, they're just pushing six packs. Or you get back to some of them.
6 packs to load them up down there. It's like carrying 40 on the lower.
Oh Lord, yeah. It's a whole different world back there in that intercoastal. And it's, like going through Houma and places like that. And I thought, oh Lord, I remember that. And those pilots used to have anhydrous ammonia, and there's no place to go.
No, there's none.
One mess up. Of course, you got to dodge the pleasure boats and all that silly stuff. And I thought, man, that's one thing I can say about the river. A lot of the pilots a lot of women take a lot of risk, and at any given point, you're within 150 feet of having a bad day, and nobody wakes up thinking, well, I'm going to have me an accident. No, they don't. I said, and you don't ever hear me. If you see somebody or hearing of somebody, even if I know them and I don't like them, I thought, well, I don't feel bad. I feel bad for them. I never would laugh at somebody, because nobody wakes up at watch thinking, well, I'm going to go out and plant the jack staff on the red light, and
Right. Anytime something like that has happened, I'm kind of with you on that. Is that I didn't want to feed on it as bad information and exploit that person. I would sometimes, if I knew the person and something had happened, I would ask what happened so that way I can learn from their mistake.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't do it to try to put them down, because, like you said, man, it's a very humbling thing to have happen. To, you get up, you eat your chow, you go upstairs to take the watch, and you think, everything is fine. Sun's shining, tulips are growing out of the river. And within 30 minutes, to have a wreck or something, man, it's pretty humiliating.
Yeah. Well, getting back to Tim's his deal about, talking to me, I started out in February 90. I had got out of the service in January in 80, had my own business, Lubricant Construction, down in Florida, and I let it get away from me. It was all my fault. I could do the job, but I mismanaged it. And I went to Arkansas in 89, and I kept trying to find, I asked the boy I was working with, I said, how can you make any money living in Arkansas? And he said, well, if you don't mind being away from home, you work on the river. And he had worked for Brent. I said, what are you talking about working on the river? And he talked to me a little while. And at the same time, I was looking in the back of these Field and Stream magazines, and it said, work a month, home a month. And what this guy did was he would send you a picture of the United States and be broken down in a section like Arkansas, Missouri, and you pay him like $5, and he'd send you all the addresses, and he'd say, hey, take a picture of yourself and tell them you want to work on the river. And I sent out about 30 applications. I look back now, it was like, hell, some of them were like boat stores, but I sent some to Southern Towing, and I was working one day, and my dad called. He said, hey, you got a guy from Southern Towing named Bobby Jones. He's wanting to talk to you. And I said, well, I'll call him. And he said, I got 2 of your applications here. Would you be willing to take a drug test? I said, well, yeah. So he sent me up a drug test there in Little Rock. I went and took it. He called me a week later and said, well, would you be willing to come to Memphis, work for us, try us out? I said, well, yeah. And I went there, and first trip or two, I was like, oh, what did I get myself into? It's kind of remind me of that picture they take when you first get into service, the first couple of days, and you're thinking like, what in the hell have I got my ass into? But I stayed with it. I worked for Southern for about 5 years, a little bit over 5 years. And I left them, went to MEMCO, worked for MEMCO for about 5 years, about 5.5, somewhere in there. And finally, I went down to, hold on, my cat's getting out of the way. And come on, quit playing.
You can't help it. You're such a pussy magnet, John.
I know. I got, everybody says, oh, you need to get rid of cats. Man, I love cats. Unconditional love. They don't talk back to you. They get up on time. But now I went to Arco in December of 2000. An old pilot, old Barry Go. You may have heard of him, Barry Go.
No, I sure hadn't.
But he started out on deck with me at MEMCO about 98. I'd went to Tico up there, drove all the way down there, and the guy that was taking applications, he just made me feel like a dog. And I thought, man, he said, well, it's still
it's a Tico or a Mid-South.
Yeah, I'd bring up his name, but I thought, well, ain't no sense of rubbing his nose in the dirt, because he had to go through his living hell after they sold out. But I was going home, and my old buddy called me and said, I said, what did you do? I said, I went down to Tiki and said, man, don't be going down there. You call the office, tell them, talk to so-and-so, and fill out a vacation. And buddy, it wasn't about 2 weeks later, I was driving up to St. Louis from Little Rock, and put me on that. I think they put me on the one of their 6000s. My first trip. I rode that for about 6 days, and Prairie Dawn. That was the name of the boat. And then they transferred me to the Prosperity, and I rode that Prosperity for the rest of my career on the river. Of course, every once in a while I'd end up on like the Enterprise or the some of their other boats, just tripping or filling in. But I spent a good time there, and I enjoyed it. I think, well, everybody's got to work somewhere. I thought, if I'm gonna work out here, I'm gonna at least try to earn the most money I can. And they were paying real good. And I've seen some of their pay scales they're doing now. Give me just a second. Let me get my cat out of here. Come on, go. This is his family time. He wants to get over here and be petted. But I finally, about 2021, I thought, I want to work till I'm 65. But I started looking at my finances and said, oh, I can do this. And once I finally did it, it took a while to figure out who I was. You do something for 30-something years. It took a good year to get it all off my system. If I go looking on the internet, on some of the Facebook groups, and here, some of these chat groups where they're back and forth, I say, well, I see some things never change. I guess that's just people complaining about the job, which they're gonna do that anywhere. But no, I see some. Sometimes I might say something, and I try to keep it. I said, man, all you can do is stir it up. They're pretty easy to do. And I thought, well, they're gonna have to learn their own way. That's all they can do. But now I'll give you a holler sometime, or give you a text on your phone there. I got your number now that Tim gave it to me, or I got it when he texted. I saw that must be Charlie's. So
yeah.
But if I might text some, say, hey, you want to talk, and I might give you a shout sometime. Yeah, you talk to your son, and say, hey, if there's a guy by the name of John Esser, and he said, approve him, because I want to keep up with you, and I couldn't find you. I think you had one site on there, but I didn't find you on there. I think one was you, but I thought, well, he may not be on Facebook.
And Charlie probably received your whatever it was, your message, but I just saw him. I guess what is today? Shit. Okay, it would have been Saturday. He came over with his wife.
Yeah,
that was my first time seeing. And he only lives 2 miles from me as the crow flies. My son and his wife. That's my first time seeing him in 2 months.
Yeah.
Because he's working full time and going to school full time. The man, it's a lot on his plate.
Yeah. Well, he's in the same thing his dad was. At his age, he trying to learn.
Right.
Hey, did you ever catch on to the little deal? I don't know if you ever heard it about the story about the Newport cigarettes. He told me,
You know, I saw it was a message that you left something about, yeah, Charlie, he was a good guy to work with or something, and you'd be surprised what he could do with a packet of Newport
Newport.
cigarettes.
I thought, oh, we better not say it on here. But there you go. There you go.
Yeah.
He used to have that old
Oh yeah,
small,
man.
say
Huh?
again. I remember he used to have that small little truck. And,
Yeah.
and I thought, how does he drive that small little truck down to Cabo St. Lucas? And I thought, I can only see that. I bet you I'm sure.
Oh, man. And I mean, John, I was telling my son this not too long ago. It was right around Christmas, as a matter of fact, when I saw him the time before this past week, and I was reminding him, and I said, yeah, you know, I said, man, to be your age, you know, because Charlie is 21 now, you know. And I said, I was 21 when I got out of the Navy, buddy, and I was telling him about that truck. I said, man, it was just a little small Nissan. I said, no power steering. It was a stick shift manual, no power steering, no air conditioning. I drove that son of a bitch from St. Louis to the West Coast of San Diego, cut south and go all the way down to Baja Peninsula, all the way down to Cabo San Lucas and back before I had to go to work, you know, because I had 28 days off. And he was just kind of listening. I said, I did all that for a piece of tail. Can you imagine? Old daddy wasn't messing around. I was trying to make sure that I spread the seed a little bit, you know?
Yeah.
The essence of the truck man's got to live on, you know?
Yeah. You used to tell me some of the stories that, you know, y'all get off at a port and y'all would get off and, buddy, all y'all saw was the sunrise every morning face down the gutter. And I thought, I can.
That's right.
I thought, man, that's.
Yeah, it was a different way of life, man. And it was a different way of life in the Navy. Because, I mean, I can think about all the places, you know, that I got a chance to see while I was in, that as a civilian, that there's no way I could afford to go see, you know.
Same.
That I was pretty fortunate, you know.
Same here with Germany. You know, I'd love to go back, but even the Germany I was in Berlin and over there in the Federal Republic, you know, in the zone, what they call the zone, and even Berlin, it's all free city now. And I walked numerous times. We go into the East Germany, into East Berlin, and it's like you travel 45 years, where the West progressed after World War II, the East stayed the same, and a lot of old
time, stuck in time.
The old, you know, living under communist dictatorships. I thought, man, these people ain't got a clue what it's like in the West. And to see the Berlin Wall come down, I would love to have been there, you know. And I got a few friends that are still. They said you wouldn't even recognize this city. It's so expanded, and all the presence of U.S. Army personnel are not there anymore. Of course, you got the embassy; it's still there. But he says this is nothing but it was one of them towns where you could go out Friday night when I was there, and you could stay partying all the way till formation on Monday morning. There was a few that did that, and I was one of them every once in a while. But no, it was a good experience. I enjoyed Germany, but it's, you know, I got out in 80, and it seemed like 20 something. What's that? 43 years ago. You know, some of these people say yes, sir, and you know, they say yes, sir, and I'm looking around like, who the hell are you talking to? So, but
what did you do in the Army, John?
I was in tanks. I was in M60A1 battle tanks, and of course, when I got out, I couldn't find any to drive. So I thought, well, I guess I'm gonna have to find a new avenue to do. Of course, I wish I'd have had tanks a few times when I was, you know, through the years, but it was a good experience. And about once a year, they have a reunion there around Elizabethtown, Kentucky, around Fort Knox, and we'll go talk. You know, some years I go, some years I don't. And some of the guys I was there with, you know, they were all getting up in their 60s, you know, 60s and, you know, early 70s, and guys I hadn't seen in 40 something years, and like it was just yesterday. And those are experiences because you talk about old times, and they can still remember some of the crazy stuff we did, like, you know, oh, was that you did that? I said, yeah, it was me. And they just bust out loud and said, yeah, we remember that. But no, it was a good experience. So
yeah, and that fall of the Berlin Wall, that was in what, 89, 88?
Yeah. I remember watching that and thought, who would ever thought that would happen? You know, The only thing I see with, Germany now, they're having to do with this war in Ukraine. And a lot of people say, well, we should not be in Ukraine. I said, well, I tell you, no matter if we like it or not, we need to be supporting the people of Ukraine. And all the stuff you read on TV, half of it's all political. I said, you can't go around pissing off our allies for the last 75 years and expect us to be the leader of the free world still. And we are, no matter what. But you start appeasing these different countries that don't like America, you're asking for trouble. May not see it right now, but later on down the line, say, well, we can just do as we please because America's weak, and that's why I see difference of what some of the other people are seeing nowadays. He said, we need to bring it all home. Well, yeah, somewhat we do, but somewhat we still need to be the leader of free Euro because I would hate to live under a communist dictatorship.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't really follow current events anymore, John. I don't watch the news or anything, but the way I feel about it on something like that is, and I don't know, I guess from just a common sense point of view, is that there's a country or a group of people or an entity that are trying to do the right thing and they can't help themselves. If we're able to help, I think that if they're trying to do something for a moral good, that's who we should help. That's what I've always thought in terms of warfare.
Yeah, I'm about like you. I don't watch much national news anymore, either, whichever channel you want to watch, because they're all trying to make the other party look bad. Now, I do pick up bits, and it was like here lately they've been talking about Cuba. They're starting to have a lot of riots in Cuba. The people are finally realizing that communism is bullcrap. And I thought, you go, people, you're finally realizing that it's a failed system. If it was so popular, then why in the whole country world? And I've been keeping up with that a little bit because I used to live down in Florida. I lived like 110 miles, well, it's 90 miles from Miami. And I lived about 50, 60 miles in a little town called Clewiston. And there was a lot of Cuban population, even some of the people that had come over to America during when Fidel Castro took over, they moved out to Florida because all of them knew about sugarcane. And some of my friends I grew up with, their parents was part of the sugarcane industry in Cuba. When Fidel took over, they all fled because he was going to nationalize them. I thought, it took you 50 years to finally figure it out. Good for y'all.
Well,
I
if you
Talk
don't,
about a place that was stuck in time, John. When you mentioned about Berlin before the fall of communism, I was reading up. I guess it was National Geographic. Close to 6, 7, 8 years ago, it was the same thing with Cuba. Was that going into Cuba now with cameras and all the technology that we currently have in the Western world to go into Cuba, that they felt like it was stuck back in the 60s.
Yeah.
In terms of what they had to drive and their buildings and everything, because they hadn't been advancing really to speak of.
Yeah. When I was in Berlin, on some weekends, they used to have a train, like a subway system around the city. And a lot of the guys, some of them would go downtown, go to the bars, and every once in a while, instead of going to the bars, I'd just get on a train, and at any given stop, I'd get out and walk around Berlin at night. You could always find a place to eat. And I'd walk the city, just looking around. I think,
Now, would you be in civilian clothes at this point, or in uniform?
yeah, civilian. Hold on just a second. My cat's going crazy. But yeah, I'd be in civilian clothes, and I enjoyed Berlin. Being of German descent, I enjoyed Germany in Berlin, and
Did they ever give you any resistance or anything because you were an American service member? If they found out and you were in civilian clothes, you were safe?
There were some places that you wanted to stay out, like the Turks, the people from some of the immigrants from Turkey. There was a faction there that they just weren't crazy about Americans. But that's anywhere you go. You're going to go. You could go to Philippines, or you could go to Indonesia, and you're going to find a group of people that just don't like Americans, no matter how much, kind of like the river. No matter how much you try to help somebody, they're still going to hate you.
Yeah.
Until it's time to get an eval. But nah, it was mostly the Turks, but I knew where to stay out of. And at the time, crime wasn't
Right.
I wouldn't go walking down anywhere anymore in this day and age. You may go walking and not get home ever.
Right.
But hey, that's about it there. I'm going to have to get up and go to the bathroom. So
Okay, man.
I've got a few more questions. If I'm happy to wait for you.
no, go. Well, give me just a minute.
Sure.
Tim, what's going on, homie?
Same old shit, my friend. Just trying to sort through this. I'm finding this kind of fascinating. I'm glad we able to make this work.
Yeah, I think it was David Rains. I guess it was, because he would have been the only one really to have any insight that I guess after he saw the first couple episodes said that my story, I guess, of being on your show or whatever, that it was kind of out of what you normally. So what do you normally broadcast on as far as the subject matter?
The normal subject, the normal episode for the first, I guess, 100. I was in a mad rush to get to 100 episodes, as if a 3-figure total count legitimized my podcast somehow.
So this was a personal goal
that nobody else was measuring, right? So people were happy with the podcast. I was biting on this bit of feedback and changing this and trying to make things better. But for a bunch of episodes, it feels like 50 episodes, I was just in this mad rush through these basic formatted questions. Where were you born? What did your parents do for a living? What are your siblings? How were you in school? Did you, what then happened? Did you go to college? How'd you end up in the industry? And then we would walk our way through. That became kind of tedious, and some people like you can talk and talk and talk for hours. Some people, my shortest episode is 11 minutes long. That's, I wasn't happy with the way the show was developing, but it started
I think I understand now why it was Joe Rogan or one of them famous, people or something, that something was said that they were talking about when they get a guest that he said, yeah, he goes, I like it when we don't have to go through our, I guess you'd say, basic questions,
right,
where you get somebody on there that you give them the ball and if they run with it to where they're able to do the talking. He said it made his job a lot easier. You agree with that?
Absolutely.
Oh.
Between Christmas and our first recordings, shit, but me and you, and then me and David Greer, in a probably 2-week period, we recorded 14 hours. So, and I had to go edit all that. So what's that?
You didn't have a lot of questions. I don't guess that you would have to refer back to, because we were able to keep talking for you.
Yeah.
Well, and I keep notes on every episode. I have this notebook next to me, keeping notes for asking questions and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But I found the conversational nature has improved the podcast for me, if no one else. I've gotten some complaints about the length of episodes being, 3 hours long, that people can't get through them. But I've started chopping those up. John, what do you think about that?
About an hour and 15 minutes. Does that seem, on some of the longer ones, you might split them up. I think you split. I'm assuming you split up the ones with Charlie, 1 and 2. I think it was.
Those were the first 2. I think were about a 3-hour 2-session recording.
Yeah, I like. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I like ones where everybody's got a story. It don't matter if you're running a 6-pack in the intercoastal, or you're running 42 or 46 or 50 down the lower, or a 2-piece unit from Donaldsonville to Denora, Pennsylvania. Everybody's got a story, and they always got, the ones I like is the different little things that really don't mean much to somebody on the bank, but you hear them. It's like, we were talking one time on the boats, and the new guy was out there, and he said, "What are y'all doing when it gets cold?" And he said, "Well, if you got to take a dump, you just take a dump in your pants so you stay warm." And the guy looked at us, and I know what he was thinking, like, these guys are crazy. And later on, he asked me, "Do y'all really do that?" And I thought, "Well, hell no, we don't." but it's just the way he asked it. What do you do when you get cold and you got to go to the bathroom? And we both, me and this other guy, turned to him and said, "Well, you just crap in your pants." And this guy laughed. We were both laughing. Finally, the guy come up later and said, "Y'all weren't really serious about that, were you?" I said, "Well, no." But I said, if you got to go to the bathroom, go back to the boat. Just be careful. Don't slip and fall. But it's the little things like that I miss. And so, like I was saying, everybody has a story to tell, and that's what I enjoy about some of the videos. You hear different, like the guy running the 6-pack over to all in that bad area down there, home or something like that, and it's like, and some people say, well, a 6-pack is nothing. Oh, yes, it is. You get back in some of them places, you wish you had one barge would be too many. Or, like even on the lower, everybody, northbound ain't as bad. Southbound, you got to be on your toes. And they earn their money. I can say that. And from what I've seen, at one camp I rode with, he said, "I don't mind you coming up and talking. At nighttime you get your stuff done, but when I got a bridge coming like Greenville or something," and that was even before they took out the old bridge. He said, I'll have you come up and make coffee early, and I don't want to be bothered." He said, "Nothing against you, but he said, I need to concentrate because once things go bad up here, you don't have very much reaction time, and I want to be concentrated." And there's sometimes, "Hey, what are you doing?" He'd call downstairs and say, "Hey, what are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm done cleaning." I said, "Man, come here and we'll crap with me for a little while." And I'd go up there and we talk about all kinds of stuff, because everybody's got a story,
Yeah, that's what I was asking Tim while you stepped away was that, up until our meetings together in January, Tim and I, of what his, I guess, basic thing that, that he was his subject matter for his podcast channel. I didn't really know much about it, and he was telling me that while you were gone, that he would ask the basic questions of where a person's from and how they or where they went to school and how they got into the industry, kind of the format of between the Levies podcast and what they normally do for subject matter. Because when I first approached him, I didn't know if this would be something that he'd want to. I almost did it. I don't want to say in a jokingly way, but I didn't know what to expect. I just thought, man, I watched this one video with David Range, a guy I worked with for many years. But I thought to myself, I thought, well, I can send this fellow an email and at least tell him that I could tell the industry of what not to do.
Yeah, but
yeah.
Charlie, you deal with the best you can. I don't judge you. I've seen it happen to a lot of people. I've seen it happen to people wearing a suit and tie and don't feel bad about the road you've had to travel and are still traveling. And I thought, there's got to be something I can do to help Charlie out. If I can do it, I'll do it. But
I appreciate it, man.
One thing I was going to mention to Tim, I've been thinking about this for a while. I said, an idea for a podcast would get some, a lot of towboaters out there, if they work out there for 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 years, some of them retire and they don't have the first clue what to do with their money. And the first thing, you're having to go listen to this person or that person. And I wonder if it would behoove to have a podcast like or say like maybe, I got my money with Morgan Stanley, and I got my 401k, they put it in a lifetime annuity. And I don't get as much return, but I am guaranteed an X amount of dollars. Now the market may take a dump, I still get the same amount of money. Now when I die, that money goes to my wife. And when both her and I are gone, then that money goes to the siblings. Maybe what I'm trying to say is, if Tim could have some time down the line of somebody, a professional that could tell you, like say most average towboater retires maybe 150, 200,000, 300,000, 500,000. I got a rough idea of what that pilot, that captain that's fixed to retire here, I got a rough idea of what he's got. And I thought, oh Lord, but he's been doing it for 46 years and he wanted to remodel his house, but he's still going to get out. Maybe I don't know what I'm trying to just say to Tim, but like maybe have a podcast with somebody, a financial advisor, and ask them, say, you know, you got a lot of guys that majority of them don't have a degree. They they they've been making good money for a long time. They got a little nest egg. What could they do with that? And but I enjoy. Go ahead, Charlie.
Yeah, I was going to say that additionally, I mean, you know, in addition to say a financial advisor, due to the river industry being a pretty unique thing, I think if a guy like yourself who's already retired, although you know early into your retirement, that you're retired now, that you could also have input of what has worked for you and what hasn't for anyone else who's fixing to retire, you know.
Yeah.
Because I didn't, which I mean, it doesn't apply to me at this point, but I can understand what you're saying. There would be a lot of apprehension if I was like in my late 50s. I wouldn't. I would want some sound advice, not only from a financial advisor, but from someone who's going down the road that I'm, or who's been down the road that I'm going. What would I do next? I think a guy like yourself would be a good addition to a financial advisor, but that's just my opinion on it.
Yeah, you know, it's the little things. What I'm saying is the stories that people have to. That's what I enjoy listening to. But you know, even when I got ready to retire, I thought, well, now what do? This is the amount of money I got to invest. Luckily, my wife is at Morgan Stanley. That's who she rolled over her 401k to, and that you still there?
Yeah.
But
she worked for Morgan Stanley, you said?
No, she worked at Arkansas Blue Cross Blue Shield for 39 years.
Oh, okay.
It's funny that we were talking one time and she told me some of the things that went on up there, and I told her, I said, well, I tell you, I told her, I said, we had the same problems out there. The only thing on the boats, you can't get away from it. You have good trips, you have bad trips. You got all types of people you work with. Some are good, some are great, some are like, how did you ever get out of bed this morning, And but you meet all types of people out there, and a lot of them I still keep track of some of them, or even like sometimes I'll wake up and I'll be sitting in the house and I'll look at the clock and I thought, it's 11:30. I wonder if they're out checking tow yet. And I thought, you clown, you've been away from there for 2.5 years. Who cares what they're doing? or like, or I'll see where I'll look where my old boat's at, and I'll see, oh, and I'll text somebody on the boat and say, oh, you totally stuck it. Like you see him right above the lock, and I'll text him and say, oh, you stuck it right on the other watch. He said, yep, sure did. Worked out great, didn't it? I said, yeah, that'd have been me having to get up. So I still see things going on out there. They don't think, I'll keep an eye where the boat's at, and I'll see him getting close to the lock. And I said, well, they're going to put right on the other watch. And I'll text them. I said, ooh, you put it right on that other bunch, didn't you? And they said, ooh, how'd you know that? I said, I can read that vessel finder. I said, I know where y'all at a lot of times. It's weird how you keep up with little things like that. Of course, if you're the watch coming on watch and you're getting stuck up on you, like, you wake drinking your coffee, trying to wake up, and you ask them, say, hey, what was going on? Oh, we're just going to the wall. And you're like, I'd look at them like, no way. So,
man, Tim, you'd have to be able to really understand or appreciate what he's saying, because I do know of some guys that would work so hard to make sure that they could put a bridge or a lock off on the next watch.
I don't think it's intentional. Maybe sometimes.
Right. Yeah. I mean, some of it though is intentional, but for the most part, it's just how the cookie crumbles. And I just took whatever came on my 6 hours, did the best thing I could. But every once in a while, you would find someone that they would almost, relish in the idea of trying, if I pull these engines back just another 20 RPMs, then we won't get up there until 5 minutes after Charlie takes the watch, type of thing,
Yeah. And then find out you call in the lock. Well, Cap, you might back in. We got 3 or 4 boats ahead of you. They come back on.
The next watch gets on, and you ain't even been through the lock yet.
Oh, and they get madder and hell at you. They're like, hey, there's nothing I can do about it. I'm just doing what the lock. That's all we can do. But nah, it happens sometimes. I don't know. You try not to think it's on purpose, but that old captain, he's still out there. He used to work at Ingram, And there for a while, our backwash is getting like every bridge, every tow work, every lock. And this old retired captain come over there riding the backwash, filling in. And he didn't say much about the first. He didn't say much about the first day or two, and he still rides the lower. I'm not going to say his name. Actually, he lives in St. Louis. And finally, one day we making lot 22 southbound. We'd been catching everything since he got on, like every log, every tow work. And finally, he got on the speaker there on the head of the tow, and he said, he didn't say anything. And I got him talked in the lock coming south, and I was doing something, and he come on the speaker and says, "Damn, boy, y'all sure do catch a lot. You sure do catch a lot on this backwash." And I turned around and speaking, and I said, "Boy, you're good. Did I ever tell you that? You're good." He figured out we was getting everything. I said, you're good. You're a good captain pilot." And he had laughed. And to this day, we still get a kick out of it. I wonder, he's 68, 69. I wonder, I asked him, said, "You ever retire?" I said, "Yeah, maybe next trip." I said, "It's been 2 years since you've been saying that, you clown." But he gets off and rides his motorcycle, go down to, he does trips down to like, somewhere in the Caribbean. And he's always posting pictures of it. But no.
Well, speaking of stories, John, I'd like your perspective on that first hitch riding with this guy, and that spike bars incident from the bathroom on out.
Oh Lord, I remember that. I remember coming out of the bathroom with my pants down, like, because I had the radio. And my life check was in the floor. And actually, I think it was Tony Stansbury that's calling out, "John, you on here?" And I said,
yeah, it was Tony on watch. Yeah.
And he said, "Man, something's going on out this spike bars." And I thought, well, we wired it in. I think we even had it tripled up, and something had happened. I don't know what, but I don't know if something gave. We got out there, and I think it was just loose. For some reason, it had come loose on one side, and I think maybe one of them stationary wires had broke. Of course, MEMCO had the big stationary inch and a half, but he laid them. They were strong if they weren't kinked up. And I remember walking out there, and I was like pulling up my pants, and I come in there, and Kulage looked at me like, "What the hell is going on here?" I said, "Man, we got to go. We got to go." And I grabbed my jacket, grabbed my shirt, and locked out there. And Charlie goes, "Wait, hold on for me." I said, "We got to get out." I said, and I remember going up the Tony steps. I think it was an empty too, yeah. And
it was the Harry Waddington. You remember the first Harry Waddington?
Yeah,
that open wheel boat. Yeah, that was the one we rode, that triple screw.
Yeah, that was the old Lady Gloria, and it used to sit up there at St. Louis for years. And MEMCO come in there, and they saw them old inland oil boats down there at Street Oil, and they sit there for years. You know, they did a little work to them, and they really didn't need to do that much. And I think they did a lot of remodeling the galley and stuff like that, but a lot of them, they just cleaned it up and painted it. And it ended up being a good boat. I think now it's run by Campbell Transportation, I think it is, up there on the upper Ohio. I think that's who owns it now. But I remember walking out that door, and they had that cook. She was a good cook. She was from Memphis, old Betty Weber. And I come in there to the galley one day, she was crying. I said, Betty, what's wrong?" And evidently she had been abused by her ex-husband, browbeat, never beat her, and she was crying. I said, "Well, what's wrong, Betty?" And she said, "Nobody ate my food." I said, "Betty, don't worry about it." I said, "These boys, they may not eat supper, and they'll come, every one of them will be down here for seconds in the morning at breakfast." And she was all upset, and I'll never forget that. She was crying up a storm. I thought she was having a heart attack. And I thought, Betty, I think she passed away here a couple of years ago. She lived in Memphis, and I think her daughter had a restaurant, and she retired and went to work from there. But she got to be in her 80s then, because you're talking, 96. Here it is, almost 2026. So she was like 65 back then. So I think she passed away. I tried looking on the internet to find it, but I did find a few things, but it wasn't her. But I'm pretty sure she's gone. But now
And Jerry Ferguson and Dan, well, I forget Dan's last name. They were the two captains.
Yeah, they both died.
And Tony Stanberry and Marty Melton, they were the two pilots.
Marty, now Tony is riding for Marquette. He's a captain. He's been a captain. He's a cap over at ACBL. He's on Facebook, and he probably watches too. I contact Tony every once in a while. Jerry Ferguson died. He had liver problems. He died in 2010 from Tennessee, Jackson. And
yeah, 51 Fergie.
Dan died here about 1999. He ended up getting prostate cancer and died. I'm Facebook friends with his wife and his daughter, and he said
he was from Maysville, Ohio, I think.
Yeah, Kentucky.
Kentucky,
yeah,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, and
my other Ohio.
Yeah, that chief engineer, I don't know if it was on there at the time. He was from Farmington, Missouri. No, Bonne Terre, and he died on the boat. He had a heart attack and died.
Mark Willett.
Yeah, he died on the boat. Now, after I left, he died.
My phone's about to die.
Yeah, but
sorry.
No, getting back. Well, he's off here. At first I thought, when they did this podcast, I thought he's going to be on the phone. Then I saw where Tim had sent me an email about send me email. So I checked my email, and I thought, well, okay, we'll do it on Zoom on the computer, my laptop. That worked out a lot better, Tim. And I thought it's going to be pretty hard doing it on that camera, on the cell phone. But
yeah. See, I'm not able to do it from my damn laptop, John. I can explain why later, but anyway, yeah, my battery's going to die, fellas. But I did everything I could. I had to fully charge when we started.
Yeah. Now I'll give you a call sometime there, Charlie. And you look better. You look like you're doing a little bit of it.
Oh, really? Well, yeah. I'm glad to hear that.
I think the last time who did anybody steer you at MEMCO? So you had to go to Marquette.
No, I broke in on my own, John, is what I did. And along the way, I didn't try to bullshit anybody, as far as, oh yeah, I can run this. I mean, I would let them know if I wasn't familiar with it, but I was never a steersman.
Yeah. But that's about anything you do out there. You see are you still there? I think your battery just died. No, it's still there. But it's like that on the river. You can bullshit somebody for so long, but then they're, I've seen some guys come out there and they end up getting in a position. They're unsure of their job, and then they probably use bravado and being mean and being an asshole. I said, that's only going to kill you.
Right.
All you're going to do is piss off a lot of crew members. And there's nothing, you don't have to be their best friend, but you don't have to babysit them all the time. But if you start treating them like dogs, you're never going to get bit by one of them, and you got to treat them with respect anymore. And
that's not to say that, I didn't have any help. I mean, I had help along the way, John, from different experienced pilots and captains, but I was never in a steering program per se.
Yeah. And I think MEMCO didn't, I don't think they even had a steering program at the time. But by the time, one of the reasons I quit over there is they put the Harry Waddington down there running from Baton Rouge to IMT.
Oh, the turn trade.
Yeah. And I think one of the videos they had, one of the guys was on there, and I thought that was a dangerous run. They had us and I think
Jack
Flout and we were
Billy Joe and twin screws.
Yeah. And
Billy Joe Bowen, I forget the name of them other 2 or 3 twin screws that they had, because the Jack Flout and Harry Waddington were triple screw. They were sister ships, and they put them in a turn trade because Matt Lagarde was a brand new pilot. I guess, hell, he's like head of compliance now at some place, or VP of somewhere.
Yeah. And I understood the reason that, the theory was keep your lower boats running, constantly turning, you'll make more, and have those boats down there doing the drops, pickups, moving the stuff around. And then if your boat can spend 3 or 4 hours turning tow, it'd be standing down there building your tow, losing 2 or 3 days in the hole, where they might turn out of Baton. There used to be a fleet right there at Economy, close to Economy, there at Baton Rouge, and that's where they'd turn out of a lot. Now sometimes they'd come down like, oh, below CCI or Darrow or somewhere in there, and turn us. That's if we didn't, we went to IMT and dropped tow. I think we went down where Charlie Cobb was on that boat when we went down there. Remember
Charlie Cobb?
Yeah. And I told him, actually,
great guy, man, good pilot.
Oh yeah, he's a captain over at
Marathon.
Yeah, that's him. And I contact with him every once in a while, and he got married and had, I think he got one or two kids with this new woman, but they've been married 10, 12 years now. And I quit down there. I did it 3 trips, and I said, whoop, that's enough for me, because I thought this is dangerous. Because if you got in the back boat, did clean up, you did something that day, because it was constantly moving, rigging, dropping, picking up barges, setting it up for the next, and back then you wired it in just enough to get out of the way, and you laid any other rigging that you needed. Or if you're just dropping down, say 50 miles, you get enough to get down there. And there was an old captain on that boat. I can't even remember his name. He's from up north. And buddy, he'd always I don't know what we did to that ship number 49. I think it was 49. And finally, Charlie called me up one day, I think, and he said, come up here just a second. I said, yeah. And he confronted that number 49 ship. And he said, Captain, can you go to the side channel for a second? I said, yeah. He said, I don't know. It seems like every time we meet you somewhere, you're always cutting us off or doing something. He said, I'm not trying to start an argument. He said, but I don't know what. And finally, that ship pilot said, well, buddy, I tell you, about a couple trips ago, whoever was on that boat, we know who it was, and we remember the incident. He said they just would not work with him and tell me he didn't know how to drive the rear. And he said, I don't intentionally do it, but he said that captain that was on there at the time did have no business being down this hole. And finally, Charlie said, well, buddy, I'm here to make a living. I don't want to piss you all off. He said, if I need to make a wider berth of you, then let me know, And after that, we never had a problem. And I remember just down there, if you don't know where you're at, you don't need to be down there, especially it's a madhouse. Once you get to right above Baton Rouge at Delta Swamp, you turn on 67, and it's nothing but a madhouse. Constant noise. Well, you know what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah.
And they talk about accidents happening down there. There's a lot of accidents, near misses. I don't know how it is now, but the last time I was down, it's like, God, I can't wait to get the hell out of this hole, because it's nothing but mass confusion, organized mass confusion. If you can figure that one out.
And what's funny about that, John, is what I've learned, and I'm sure you have too, is that over time, the guys that are in the turn trade, that especially if they live close, like nearby locally, a lot of those guys like it for whatever reason. That I think if that's their niche, and that, but for me, I did the turn trade just a couple brief times in my career for a couple months at a time. Yeah. And it was something I'm glad I did for gaining more knowledge. But to think of doing that as pilots, say the turn trade for the next 20 years or something, from Baton Rouge down to Myrtle Grove back and forth, no, sir, Bob.
Well, actually, Charlie had broke in down there IMT. I think that's
what he said, yeah.
He said, even he was starting to say, I don't know about this run. I said, well, I know you don't know. I definitely know about it. I don't want to do it no more. Of course, it'd wear you out. You can make an old man even in the warehouse. And he said, yeah, I'm thinking about it. I don't remember where he went after that, but last time I think he went to
well, he stayed with MEMCO, and he became captain of the Drew Lorette.
Okay.
Eventually, yeah.
Yeah, because
he was on the Drew Lorette as captain until the acquisition, whenever AEP was bought out by ACBL. I think that he stayed captain on the Drew Lorette, I believe.
Yeah. And there was a few guys that said, they stuck it out, because there for a while they didn't know from one day to the next who was going to own the company when they started. That's before AEP bought them out, when Florida Progress had decided to get out of the barge line. and that's about the time AEP, and I heard it gotten pretty good over there when AEP took, because they were basically on the same road about safety and training your crews like it is now. Like
right, the safety culture was a lot better.
Oh, our ARCO is big time safety, which makes sense because, you know, they even, and I understand, you know, they did it with their not pocket knives, and when it first happened, I thought they're crazy, and it wasn't it wasn't long after that somebody had got a pocket knife out and cut themselves. I even watched a guy cut him. He was taking a lid off of Sujin, an old Sujin thing, and I was looking. I said, "He gonna cut himself." And it wasn't 2 seconds later, he stabbed her right in the arm. I thought, boy, but the safety culture is probably the most improved thing I've seen. You know, and even they get mad at me sometimes. Say, "Hey, watch this, watch this." Yeah, I know. I said, "Well, you know, it only takes one time to get really hurt really bad." And they cut down their incident rates and accident rate. And nowadays, if somebody gets hurt, they're going to be in an investigation. They're going to know why'd you get this in your eye? Well, was you wearing your safety glasses? Well, I took them off for just a second. You don't take your safety glasses off for just a second. You wasn't wearing them, would you? Now, I don't think they write them up, but they give them like a verbal, like, hey, there's a reason for them safety glasses. There's a reason for them earplugs. There's a reason for safety glove, you know. I'd even see sometimes, even my last couple of years, guys want to get out there and handle wires with no gloves. I said, man, put your gloves on. Oh, I'm all right. I said, that's not the point. I said, I don't have to go back to boat and fill out an export because you slit your hand on a wire. Oh, it won't happen to me. I said, well, let's just be safe. If you don't want to do it when I'm not here, fine. I don't care. But when I'm out here, we're going to go by what you're supposed to do. And why would you want to slit your hand open anyway? But that's just they live and learn, you know. It's, if I could pass on anything, it'd be the experience, the knowledge of what I learned over 30 something years. You know, if I could just pass that on to somebody. But it's like I think on one of the videos here a while back about some of these old captains used to have marks on their
bar books.
Yeah, and I know I looked at that one old captain. He's retired now. He's Tobe Webb from Whitwell, Tennessee, and he'd have like marks in there. Like there used to be an old oak tree there that sunk back in 1965, and there was the old end of that trunk would stick up, and you could back in your boat right below that. And it's like, do you like just little things that you don't see anymore on the electronic charts? And I wish I'd have one of them old chart books, you know, of all the places you can run at certain pool stages or things like that, you know, because you could ask him. He wasn't an educated man, that Captain Webb, but he'd know the river like the back of his hand. He said, well, he'd explain to you, well, take your skiff and you go up here below this old rock, back where that old steamboat sunk 35 years ago. I'm like, what are you talking about? So it's just things of that nature that you're losing over the years, you know. And there's really no way to keep track of it, you know, of that knowledge. Maybe not in this day and age won't, but.
You got some time for one more, John? I know we're fighting with Charlie's battery power right now.
Well, even if you guys lose me, man, just keep going. And I mean, I've just been enjoying listening to John, you know.
Oh, well, I'm not.
While you still have some battery power, this is related to you, Charlie. John, tell me about the time when he stepped on that boat for the first time and that first hitch with him, aside from the spike barge incident. How was working with him and fresh out the Navy? I know you said he shared some stories with you.
Truthfully, I looked at him and I put down my glass and like, oh Lord, another loser. No, I remember Charlie as a good guy, and we hit it off right off the bat. You know, he was in the Navy, I was in, and we started talking.
I want to do something before I lose my power. Was Tim, John? I was being shown around by one of the other deckhands. He was considered a senior deckhand, so he got the bottom rack. I had the top, and this guy was just kind of disgruntled. You know, this deckhand I'm speaking of. If John is going by the room, and the door was cracked just a little bit because we're in there bullshit, and he opens up the door. Now you got to remember, this is the room where this guy and I are splitting, you know. And John pokes his head in. He goes, oh, two men alone in the room, pardon me. And he backs out and just keeps, and he would do that all the time. It didn't, I found out later that John would stop at anybody's door and do that. And if there were two guys, he'd go, oh, two guys alone in the room, pardon me. You guys later. Yeah.
I remember that incident. I
Yeah.
did this dude.
Or, you know, like we'd be eating dinner and John out of nowhere, he'd pop up and he would leave his plate and run out the side door of the boat and start waving, right? Oh shit.
Yeah, I guess he lost his battery there. No, it's I remember Charlie was a good man, and he did exactly what he said he was going to do. He's going to go up to the warehouse, and you know, in that aspect, he did what he said he was going to do, and by God, he did it. You know, and I feel bad for Charlie. You know what he's had to go through the last couple of years, and you know, I'd do anything I could do to help him out. That's why I brought up that deal about the VA and the veterans lawyer. And I thought, if anybody could help it, it'd be him. Are you still there, Tim?
I'm here. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Just listening to you.
I'd say as far as the time goes on these, like an hour and a half, but you can only get so much information in an hour and a half, you know. And I know some guys, they'll see it. They might look on there, oh, this thing one's going to be 2 hours long. Well, but you always learn something, or you see a river from a different perspective. You know, I enjoy every one of them, you know. You hear
what do you think about the shoreside folks?
The shoreside boats?
The shoreside people that I host.
I see it for them, and I've learned throughout the years that, you know, you hear some people on the boats, like, them office people don't know diddly Scott. And I kind of like, and there have been times I question, but they're all doing a job. They all got a job to do. There's a reason they're doing that. We may not understand why they're doing it. They're, you know, that you might shake your head sometimes, like by some of the policies come out, but there's a reason they're doing that. They don't do it just because, well, let's see, what can we do to piss off people on the boats too? They try to, you know, and there's times I've like scratched my head, like, okay, what's this supposed to mean? And a lot of the ideas are good. There's always going to be that certain amount of people that ride the boats and people that are in the bank. If they can work together to at least find a common bond now, and there's reasons that they do, that people in the office do what they do for safety and lawsuits, you know, or, you know, any number of things that come up. You know, they're looking from a make, you know, the company's there to make money. If they're not making money, nobody's got a job, you know. There might be sometimes you're sitting around, you know. It got to be a point where they figured out that back in 2003, ARCO had a layoff, and they found out that a lot of people couldn't afford to be off, so they got other jobs, and they had a hard time crewing up some of their boats. And they try to keep, if there's a slow time, they tell you, say, hey, fellas, you're going to be sitting here for 2 weeks. I'm sure there's plenty of stuff on the boat doing it. We you know, they give you time to, you know, wax floors, or if you're painting, really get a like right now, you should be whole hog on chipping and painting the boat, because time July comes here, if you're still painting, it's too late. You're hot. And I noticed that boat I used to ride, they got on like here about 2-3 weeks ago. They're already starting to sand. And there were some days it's cold. I said, well, I'll tell you, come June, July, you'd be glad you did this. And it's so easy between the rain, the spring rain, and the summer heat. Once the summer heat get there and you're still chipping, it's a hard stretch to run in. And usually every year, it'd be glad people did start early. They'll look back and say, well, I'm sure glad we got that over there. And you'll see a lot of people still just starting, you know, just start chipping. Too late then, buddy. But
well, getting back to one of your points, that the sort of separation of office and Mariner, I think that separation has kind of grown actually over the few years I've been in the industry. It was going on 9 years. I made an effort out the gate to connect with these guys that are out there, because the more I know about them, the more I can work with them. You know what I mean?
That's good. Do you ever go ride? Do you ride the boats?
I ride as often as I can. It's actually a requirement right now that we ride overnight somewhere.
Yeah. Now, are you working out of below Baton Rouge, or are you working down there?
Yeah, I'm with Ingram. I'm kind of a hybrid schedule. I work from home some days and then from our office in
Okay,
reserve.
okay. And that's probably a good thing because you can touch bases like you see it from the towboater standpoint.
Well, when we rolled out a new IT system, that was another time with Ingram when I stepped out there, you know, for a day watch with these captains out there at Triangle and Capital Fleets. But prior to that, when I was with ACBL, I was with AEP first, and then
Okay.
ACBL bought them 6 months later. During that period, we rolled out a new IT system,
You said
and
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
I got a question for you about AEP, but go ahead.
Okay. Uh, with ACBL and this new computer system, I was able to get out there. I was on 7 on, 7 off, and on those 7 off, I'd go visit the boats and train on the IT system
Okay.
and get to know the area at a Tiger Fleet, get to know some at a Convent, the ship anchorages, Belmont, you know, all up and down there. Um, but I've tried to maintain that connection, and that's part of what prompted this podcast
Yeah.
is because, you know, I'd have all these phone conversations with these guys and we'd cut up, you know.
It kind of sounds about like what that war that oh, the one that had the kidney problem. The video.
Walter, I think
Yeah.
Walter, the liver problem.
Kidney. He had a kidney. He was having health problems real bad. He would kind of talk like he went to the boats too and try to connect with the captains and the
Yeah,
crews. At least try to touch bases um, on a personal standpoint. You know,
right.
ride a couple days and get to know them instead of normally when the office people come down, it's like, oh Lord, now what. And usually the majority of the time, and 80-90% of the time, they'd all be sensible and try to talk to you. But you can only, within an hour or two, you're either cutting loose from the dock or going somewhere. And a lot of times the training mates, or what they'd be called the training mates, they would come ride the boats and see how the crews were getting along, and they wouldn't try to tell you how to do your job. If you asked them something, they'd let you know, hey, this is way you need to handle this. Sometimes I'd answer, hey, well, I'm having a problem with this X person here. What's the best way to? Because me, I'm kind of old school. You don't get out of bed on the third call anymore. I wake them up, and I hate going back and waking them up a second time. And I understand everybody goes to sleep, but I'm not going to play a snooze alarm guy. I got to go in the third time to wake you up. It's a good way to make me mad.
Right.
And I wasn't rude, but I said, hey, if this bed was on fire, would you get out of bed? So,
Yeah.
but I think I've seen, what I've seen with ARCO, and even MEMCO tried to head in that direction where they become more in tune with the crew. And MEMCO was a good company. I enjoyed that. And it was small to be a family. Of course, the bigger the company, the bigger the cog. And ARCA was good. ARCA was good to me. Yeah, there was times I questioned this or that, and but that's any job you go to anywhere. At least from my standpoint, you're going to have good managers and bad managers no matter where you go. That's just a fact of life. And you got some people that had no business being a manager position, and they usually trip themselves up in the end, and they normally do. And the good ones usually stay around, and you respect them for that. Like, well, and Arco had still some people that used to ride the boats, and that's good to a certain point. And they were bringing some of the guys, trying to bring in some more of the people that rode the boats to see it from a towboater standpoint, but also know what it meant to be. We got X amount of dollars to fix this boat. You can't fix everything at once. You fix what's critical, and then we'll worry about remodeling the boat down the road. But it does help the crews to know that somebody will come out and ride the boats and can be on a level term of knowing where you're coming from, the towboat, because it's hard enough being out there riding a boat for days in and don't feel the company's got your back. and I've rowed boats like that. And it makes for a long, long trip, but it got through them.
Well, I certainly developed a very different appreciation for what it takes to do the job that we're asking y'all to do from behind these computer screens. But you said you had a question for me about AEP?
Oh, yeah. You said you was AEP for how long?
Oh,
Yeah.
July of 15, I joined them, and then February of 16, we were ACPL.
Did you know a man by the name of, he was in the office, and I think he was out of Paducah, Tim Sizemore.
The name sounds familiar, but I don't know that I could pick him out of a lineup.
I think he was in training.
Okay.
Now he hired me at MEMCO, and when I hired at MEMCO, I sent on the application, and they were experienced. He says, "You know how to make a bowline?" I took it, made a bowline. He said, "Okay, you're hired." But he said, "I see you got, that's back when I worked for Southern for 5 years, and that's when Southern had a run. They're pushing for PV for ConAgra. They took over the PV boats, and I worked on one of their boats and used a lot of boat rigging. And MEMCO still used a lot of boat rigging. They double up everything all the way out, even on the Ohio, which is good because you had a lot of their tows that we ran on the Ohio were, drafting 10-6, 11-foot steel, coal, petroleum coke, and you needed, pretty rough up there sometimes. But by the time I got to Southern or for Arco, they had started getting the winches, and they would double up the steering coupling, and sometimes in running water we double up the brake coupling. And I felt naked out there, like 8 sets of rigging. And I said, "Yeah, you don't need all that stuff." Of course, the winches would not keep a tow tight as they used to be. You put 60 something, 58, 60 sets of rigging out on a tow with all boat rigging. Once you get it tight, it's going to be a strong tow until something breaks and gives. But the winches were good, but they were only so strong to a certain extent, and they would give. And but I think, as far as safety wise, the winches were the best way to go. And of course, we normally, always double up. And sometimes a weak coupling, we may lay a couple extra sets of rigging there, and never had a problem with it, shifting the coupling out of square unless you really hit something hard enough. And usually if you hit it hard enough, you're going to do more damage than tear up rigging. You may bust a string off or something like that. Well, a couple thousands of tons are going to go one way or the other, no matter how much rigging you put on it. So, but that's the biggest important thing I could see was the safety end of it. And we hardly ever had anybody get hurt, usually it was, a scratch or something like that, or other than that, other than having their feelings hurt, that was about the only things that really got hurt. But that's part of being a man, But that's the biggest improvement I saw over the years was the safety, because used to be you cut yourself back in the 90s, you went in there, wiped it off, put a band-aid on it, and you went right back to work. Put some duct tape on it or something, and that was the end of it. So now, so you're still with Ingram, right? Yeah.
I am, yes, sir.
That was I was thought, when I switched from MEMCO and I went down to Tico, I thought about giving Ingram a shot. I thought, well, because I had worked on the bank for a couple months, and I finally one day I was in a warehouse and somebody behind me was timing me with a timer, thinking, and I said, "What are you doing?" "Oh, I'm timing you how long it takes to do it." And I turned around at him and I said, "Oh my God, I got to go back to the river. I can't stand working this anymore." And I went down to Teague on the way home. I thought, well, I guess I'll give Ingram a call. That's when my buddy called me. He said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm driving home from Paducah or Metropolis." And he says, "Don't be going down there. You call Arco St. Louis to have them seen the application. You talk to such and such person." By God, it wasn't 2 weeks. I was on the Prairie Dawn riding on the Upper Mississippi, cold in a witch's tit. And that mate said, he worked for me about 2 days, said, "You got experience, don't you?" I said, "Well, yeah, I did this time or two before." And he said, "Well, what about this?" I said, and I told him, how to do it. He said, "Well, do you know how to use pumps?" "Yeah." "Well, let's take this pump out here." And he went off, signed me off, and I was on the boat for 9 days, and then they put me on a prosperity. He said, you don't need to, you're supposed to do like a whole hitch at inexperienced pay, or like what they call a new hire, or at an inexperienced level. He said, you don't need all. He said, man, you could probably work for me. And I said, well, and he said, they come down that morning and said, we sign you off, we're going to be putting you on this prosperity. And I got on there, and it was really good boat for 20 something years to ride. You don't see that very much. A lot of time, maybe your mates and your cook or your chiefs, you see them ride a lot. But anymore, some boats, captains ride the boat for 20, 30 years, and see people come and go. But
well, Bud, I had another question, but I'm blanking on it. We kept talking about other stuff. If I do think of it, I'll reach out to you now that we've connected. I do appreciate you reaching out.
I appreciate it.
And watching the podcast, and I'm glad we got to do this with Charlie. But
he looks better, and what he's been through. I mean, I would hate to see. And people say, "Well, I never do." I said, "You don't know what you would do. You never know what you might fall into. You don't know what you can't judge a man by just what you see." Because I know, and I've seen it happen to other people too, and I feel for Charlie. I hate for that to happen and to be at a point where he's feeling helpless. That's what drives me crazy. Like there's always, I'm thinking, man, that's why I come up with him contacting about this PSDC. At least that would give him, if they could get that approved and get him some income from being a post-traumatic stress disorder, that would give him some income and give him a lifeline and help him out that way. Of course, what you hear from the Veterans Administration isn't always the truth, because there are people working there, they ain't got no business being the Veterans Administration either. And one last thing, like getting back to the veterans, back when my brother first had a mental breakdown, they only want to give him 10%. And my dad said, hey, no, this happened on y'all's time. And they said, well, we're only giving you 10. He said, no, he's 100. He will never be able to work. And he got with the congressman. They got him 100% disabled now. He's taken care of. But I've even had some run-ins with people with the Veterans Administration, like, well, we're thinking about doing some shock treatment on him. I said, like hell you will. And he said, well, that's a new thing. I said, no. They gave him shock treatments back in the 70s and it didn't work. And I said, he's 65 at the time. And I said, don't you think he's been through enough? And it was a new lady had come in there and she would want to make a impression. Oh, we're trying out this new. I said, no. The best thing to do is make sure he's got a TV and he's got some chips or cookies to eat. But I found out there, people in the Veterans Administration are just like anywhere else. There's some good ones and there's some that are worthless. So well, that's about all I could probably do another podcast. You want to do it sometime?
Yeah, we'll line it up, man. Thank you for your service in the military and of course the 3 decades on the water. Appreciate your time this evening.
Okay, Tim. Yeah, appreciate you doing these podcasts. But as far as the length of them, there's so many stories you can tell. I'm sure some of them guys that talk on here, they could go for hours on end just telling you different things they've had to do and changes they've seen, some good, some not so good. And I enjoy listening to them. I listen about every one of them. I may not get them right off the bat, but I'll listen to them. So
I'm glad to hear somebody's listening, man. Appreciate you.
Okay, Tim.
This has been a production of Where You At Studios, LLC.